It all starts in the middle of a literal inferno, where a desperate voice tries to understand what on earth is happening. The young man is completely out of breath in the face of such a chaotic situation. To make matters worse, he finds himself armed with a massive sword, facing a sinister enemy floating right in front of him. The masked villain flying in his ship does not seem friendly at all, and demands to know who on earth the guy down there is. With the world falling apart around him, our MC can only wonder how he ended up in such a deep mess. But before all this chaos, we rewind time to when Kang Seoyul was peacefully drinking with his author friend. Seoyul already knows the exact same sob story is coming up about the failed web novel his friend tried to write. It turns out this slumping guy at the table is Kim Shin, a frustrated novelist who cannot accept that his career flopped once again. The writer slams the table in frustration, pointing out that Seoyul is literally the only fan who has read all of his works from the start. Out of appreciation for that loyalty, the author even named the main character of his latest web novel after Seoyul, and the two became regular drinking buddies. To be completely honest, Seoyul thinks his friend's writing style is fantastic and the world building is incredible, but the actual problem lies elsewhere. The title is way too generic, and the story feels like a blatant rip-off packed with tropes that everyone is already tired of seeing. The writer lets out a heavy sigh, admitting he knows this, and reveals that was the exact reason he wanted to talk. The author asks what Seoyul would do if he were in his shoes to save the story. Seoyul finds all that desperation hilarious and asks what single thing his friend would change in the book if he could. As a reader, he bluntly answers that the very first thing to do would be to get rid of that awful, cliché status window. After giving his honest opinion, the young man bursts out laughing, thinking his friend is simply suffering from writer's block. Except the writer seems to take the idea way too seriously and falls deep in thought. The author starts daydreaming, theorizing that the main character would be free from all limits, while Seoyul just gets amused by his wild ideas. Seoyul tells his friend not to take the conversation so seriously, but suddenly an overwhelming drowsiness washes over him. The beer can falls from his hand as his mind blacks out of nowhere, without him understanding why he feels so sleepy. The writer tries calling out to his friend, but Seoyul's body goes completely limp and begins to slide off the chair. The young man collapses while hearing his friend's worried voice asking if he is all right. His vision turns completely blurry and his consciousness fades away, leaving him clueless about what is going on. At the very last second, he sees the silhouette of his friend standing up in a mysterious pose with a rather eerie smile on his face. As the screen fades to black, the last thing he hears is his friend calling his name in a thoroughly creepy tone. After that bizarre blackout, our MC finally opens his eyes. He sits up on the bed, confused, trying to figure out how he managed to get back home after passing out like that on the street. His thirst is so intense that he heads straight to the fridge and downs an entire bottle of water to see if he can wake up for good. Feeling like his head is about to burst, he realizes he urgently needs some strong medicine to cure that terrible hangover. The young man then steps out onto the neighborhood streets and walks to the nearest convenience store to buy his potion of life. As she scans the item at the register, the cashier politely lets him know that the drink will cost 5,000 won. Seoyul finds the price ridiculous, and to make things worse, he realizes his wallet is completely missing from his pockets. But what really catches his attention is the overly smitten and spellbound look the employee is giving him. Could she have seen someone leaving a like on his profile? Completely clueless, he asks if there is something on his face, and she blushes, telling him he is way too handsome. The young man is stunned by the unexpected compliment and is caught off guard when she asks if he will be paying via status pay. That weird question leaves him completely baffled, making him wonder if he is still daydreaming. Extremely embarrassed, he tells her he left his money at home and dashes out, promising to come back later. Intrigued by the comment about his looks right after waking up, he decides to check his own reflection to make sure. As he approaches the tinted window of a parked car, he gets a huge shock upon staring at his new face. To be absolutely sure of what he is seeing, he pulls the vehicle's side mirror to inspect every detail up close. The reflection shows perfect brown hair and a jawline so sharp it could cut through wallpaper. Right at that moment, the realization hits him. That face is identical to the main character of the book written by his friend. Even though he is freaked out by the discovery, he cannot help but admit he turned into a total heartthrob with this new look. To test if this is a dream, he lands a solid punch on his own face, and the painful sting proves it is all way too real. Suddenly, a strange noise grabs his attention. Rising majestically among the modern skyscrapers is a colossal tree that seems to touch the clouds themselves. He stands in absolute shock upon realizing that is the legendary world tree described down to the smallest detail in the novel. Right then, he overhears a kid chatter excitedly on the street, saying he is going to join the famous superhuman academy. To confirm his fate once and for all, the boy shouts the classic system command, summoning a blue holographic screen right before his eyes. The kid summons his primary weapon, which is a club covered in glowing spikes, to show off in front of his friend. He boasts that he will become a weapon master, but his friend jokes around, saying that low-grade item cannot even take down a pigeon. Hearing the joke, the boy starts crying, revealing that the weapon was a thoughtful gift from his beloved grandmother. Feeling guilty, his buddy tries to fix his mistake, but the upset boy angrily throws the club backward with all his strength. By pure stroke of fate, the random throw hits a poor pigeon flying by right in the head. Watching that ridiculous scene unfold, Seoyul finally gets absolute confirmation that he was reincarnated as the MC of the story. Suddenly, a woman calls out to the boys, warning them that they are about to miss the grand opening of the World Tree Festival. Right then, Seoyul realizes he is at the very beginning of the plot and has not even awakened his overpowered status window yet. Even with his mind racing a mile a minute, he takes a deep breath and decides to stick strictly to the original script of the book. The young man then arrives at the trendy festival, where the crowd gathers at the foot of the giant, mystical tree. He remembers that the main character gains the broken fast evolution system during this exact event. As he walks along casually, a sweet elderly lady approaches him, calling him the handsomest young man in the world. She offers him warm bread baked with sacred leaves from the magic tree, wearing a bright smile on her face. Loving the immersion of this universe, Seoyul asks for the price of the treat, and the lady offers an unmissable deal. The problem is that the young man remembers he is completely broke without a single penny in his pocket. The grandmother says it is totally fine and suggests he make a contactless payment using his own system panel. Awkwardly, the young man scratches his head, explaining he has no balance because he does not even have the system unlocked yet. To his surprise, the elderly woman simply pushes the bag of warm bread into his arms without a second thought. She beams with a wide smile and insists he take the food without worrying about money at all. Seoyul tries to politely decline, but she stands her ground, telling him to just eat and enjoy the festival. The lady gives him a friendly pat, saying he reminds her a lot of her own son and wishes him a wonderful festival. Touched by such warmth, the young man thinks living in this fantasy world might not be such a bad idea after all. Meanwhile, the old lady falls into thought, thinking it is pretty odd for such a good-looking guy not to have even 2001 in his pocket. The magical tree glows at the center of everything, creating a perfect atmosphere for the start of a great journey. Sitting on a park bench, the young man takes his first bite of the mysterious bread and is amazed by the flavor. The creamy filling is so unreal that he finally understands the joy of tasting actual fantasy food. With a full stomach, the young man closes his eyes and even considers that he would love to live in this wonderful world forever. However, the peace is short-lived when he spots a trio of youths walking excitedly toward the tree. Seoyul focuses his gaze on those figures and immediately recognizes who the three individuals up ahead are. The first is Ha Si-yeon, a girl with vibrant blue hair who radiates friendliness and contagious energy. The second is Kim Cheol-jin, a stylish guy wearing a headband with a confident smirk on his face. And lastly, Choi Ji-hoon, a tall guy with a sharp gaze who oozes that classic rich air aura. Seoyul realizes they are the side characters described in the book who are destined to cross paths with him in the future. He rehearses going over to say hi, but remembers that in the original plot, they were only supposed to meet during a horrific tragedy. The young man stops dead in his tracks as a chill runs down his spine upon remembering that detail about the tragedy. Cold sweat drips down his face as he connects the dots and realizes that the event required to awaken his system is A deafening explosion occurs right behind him, turning the beautiful street festival into a literal war zone. Panic spreads in the blink of an eye as desperate people run around screaming that everything is on fire. Completely frozen, Seoyul realizes he forgot the most important and dangerous detail about the beginning of the novel. He was thrilled about reincarnating into a fantasy book, but forgot he would actually have to survive real-life disasters. The nightmare of the very first episode, known as the World Tree Massacre, has just begun right in front of him. From above, a villainous laugh echoes, mocking the peaceful citizens and calling them foolish, defenseless bugs. The man floating on his flying platform shouts insanely, announcing that the time for their punishment has finally arrived. His bizarre appearance is packed with gears attached to his body, and his red goggles glow with pure madness. This guy is none other than the inventor, the mastermind villain who planned the entire tragedy at the festival. The lunatic cackles endlessly as he savors the absolute chaos he just unleashed in the middle of the event. Amidst the smoke, Choi Ji-hoon bumps into Seoyul, shoving him aside and yelling at him to get out of the way. The rich kid takes charge, ordering everyone to evacuate the area immediately and assist whoever is injured on the ground. Seoyul watches his bravery in disbelief, wondering how those side characters manage not to be scared out of their wits at a time like this. The gorgeous tree that was glowing moments ago is now burning intensely while the villain hovers in the sky, putting an end to that peace. Seoyul panics as he realizes that reading about a disaster in a book is completely different from facing danger up close. Right then, he observes one of the heroes opening the system inventory to grab combat gear in a hurry. The fearless Kim Cheol-jin equips a glowing blue magic gauntlet and confronts the villain, questioning his sanity for doing this. Without wasting a second, the young man fires a devastating blast of mystical blue energy straight at the enemy's platform. From atop his flying platform, the villain calmly observes the coordinated attack forming right beneath him. A fierce swordswoman joins the strike, warning the masked man that he must have a total desire to lose his life to target civilians in broad daylight. Our MC recognizes the team as extremely powerful S-rank heroes who promise to resolve the situation. But suddenly, a horrifying thought hits Seoyul as he remembers that the inventor's true target is not the innocent civilians. With a sinister glare, the villain confirms that ordinary people are just a distraction and reveals his actual goal is far worse. He points at the crowd, declaring that he intends to eliminate every single superhuman gathered at the festival. With a sadistic grin behind his mask, the inventor presses a button on a mysterious device he holds in his left hand. A massive wave of dark red energy shoots out from the device, covering the entire area within seconds. Even feeling the intense pressure, the heroes attempt to cast defensive buffs and fire spells to finish off the villain once and for all. But before they can attack, the weird effect of the red wave begins distorting space itself and weakening the group. All the high-tier heroes drop to their knees, completely paralyzed as they notice their status screens have vanished into thin air. Kim Cheol-jin writhes without being able to activate his skills, while the inventor watches everything, laughing in pure joy. The villain mocks them, calling them fools for relying solely on a system for power their entire lives. He introduces his masterpiece, known as the status inhibitor, and commands the warriors to bow down before his technology. The lunatic explains that he managed to hack the system, and now humanity will be judged strictly by their actual raw strength. The red energy continues to crush everyone present, leaving the entire area under a terrifying domain. He gloats over the fallen warriors, asking how it feels to discover that power never truly belonged to them in the first place. To make things worse, the masked man grabs one of the fallen female heroes by the face, demanding an answer while she cries in humiliation. Hidden behind a pillar, Seoyul remembers that in the original story, the main character was supposed to step up and stop this, despite having no powers. Ignoring their silence, the villain tosses small explosive spheres onto the ground to finish off anyone still standing. The bombs detonate violently, sending shrapnel flying in every direction and severely injuring the defenseless heroes on the ground. Despair takes over the few survivors who watch that cruelty unfold without being able to do a single thing to help. Seoyul is completely terrified as he witnesses that brutal scene taking place right before his eyes. Trembling from head to toe, he curls up in a corner, covering his mouth so he does not make a sound and get spotted. The panic is real, and he realizes he could actually perish here because deep down he is just a regular guy in a famous body. Nearby, one of the young men cries out, pleading for his life and desperately saying he has a fiancée waiting for him at home. Suddenly, Choi Ji-hoon emerges through the smoke, lifting a massive golden sword to land a surprise blow on the villain. The inventor flinches, seeing the rich heir attack with such drive, even while under the power-blocking effect. But the gap in physical strength is massive, and the villain easily blocks the rush, landing a brutal kick to his stomach. The masked man is impressed by the young man's willpower, managing to lift such a heavy weapon without system help. Even while down and coughing up blood, the heir continues trying to crawl toward his weapon as the villain observes him like a test subject. Desperate, Seoyul tries every possible way to force his mystical system to awaken, but realizes it is completely impossible. Overcome by pure survival instinct, the young man turns around and starts sprinting away to save his own skin. He tries to convince himself that the other heroes will handle it and that he does not need to get dragged into a fight that is not his. The young man keeps running, trying to ignore the cries and repeating to himself that this is all just a wild nightmare. But suddenly, he freezes mid-stride as he spots a motionless body lying on the ground, covered in dust and debris. It was the sweet old lady who had given him the bread, lying still right beside the snack that was now scattered all over the dirt. Seeing that heart-wrenching sight, the young man's heart skips a beat, and fear gives way to a suffocating feeling of pure rage. His expression changes completely, and his eyes glint with deep hatred upon realizing the monster's terrible deed. Outside the energy dome, reporters and civilians look on in shock, unable to understand what kind of bizarre barrier that is. A red-haired guild leader appears distressed, explaining that several of her finest fighters are trapped inside. Her assistant tries to calm her down, saying the heroes are strong and surely defeated the intruders. But reality is far different. Inside, the inventor completely overpowers Choi Ji-hoon and coldly announces he will take the young man to be dissected in his lab. With a sadistic laugh, the mad scientist says he needs to open up the young heir's head to examine his brain up close. However, before the villain can do anything, a firm hand grips the handle of the massive sword lying on the ground. Even without a status system, Seoyul decides to step forward with a deadly glare, ready to engage in battle. The inventor gets quite a shock seeing that unknown kid charging furiously at him. Seoyul leaps into the air, swinging the sword with all his power, but the mad scientist manages to dodge by a hair's breadth. The young man lands with fury in his eyes, feeling the insane weight of that weapon on his tired arms. The villain steps back onto his ship and asks, intrigued, how the young man can move freely under the effect of his barrier. Stunned, the masked man demands to know who on earth this kid is who dares to disrupt his evil plans. Seoyul deeply regrets in his mind that he failed to take down that annoying scientist with a single strike. He knows his physical strength is at its absolute limit, and that if he keeps this up, he will end up meeting his end right then and there. The inventor begins analyzing the situation, suspecting the young man might be using an ancient relic for protection. The sadist begins laughing maniacally, saying the kid's body is now his new favorite test subject. As Ji-hoon struggles on the ground, Seoyul grips the golden greatsword once more, bracing for the worst. The rich heir watches the scene in shock, wondering how an ordinary guy can move so well without using a system. The inventor rushes forward, mocking our hero's completely clumsy and amateurish combat stance. Tightening his grip on the magic sword's hilt, Seoyul feels a weird, colorful energy starting to emanate from his hands. The villain strikes and grows puzzled, seeing the kid hold off the impact of a heavy sword without any active strength buff. Seoyul grits his teeth, pushing with immense force while mentally pleading for his S-rank status window to wake up already. In a swift motion, the mad scientist vanishes behind the young man, leaving him no time to react and defend himself. The masked man unleashes a violent blast of red lightning that hits our poor MC right in the back. The kid lets out a scream of pure pain as he is sent flying through the air from the destructive force of that electric attack. Lying on the ground and coughing up blood, the young man realizes his brief run as a book hero is about to come to an end. The inventor lifts him up by the neck, celebrating the capture of a mysterious test subject who seems to bypass the rules of the system. The evil scientist pulls his face close to inspect Seoyul up close and begins to notice something even more unbelievable. The psychopath breaks out into hysterical laughter upon uncovering the secret, confirming that the kid simply lacks a system altogether. He flies off carrying the young man, saying he needs to dissect him immediately in his research lab. Even while gasping for air, Seoyul decides he would rather go down fighting than become a toy for that crazy scientist. With his remaining strength, he lands a precise kick right on the villain's chest, causing the masked man to drop him mid-air. The young man begins plummeting toward the abyss, watching the destruction of the festival grow further and further away above. He remembers how thrilled he was to find out he was the main character of a novel, but now everything has turned into a real nightmare. The young man closes his eyes, accepting his grim fate and preparing for the final impact that will end his life. And in that somber manner, his brief journey in that fantasy world seems to have reached its final point. Suddenly, a massive cybernetic glitch sweeps through space, creating a digital error flash in every direction. Seoyul wakes up floating in a mysterious spiritual realm, surrounded by a bright, soothing greenish aura. He looks at his own body and notices he is fully restored, glowing with tiny specks of magical light. The young man holds out his hands in awe, feeling an incredibly warm healing energy surging through his veins. Behind him emerges the grand projection of a beautiful elven entity, glowing in shades of green and inscribed with ancient runes. The majestic elven queen hovers in the air, offering a serene smile to the young man who remains frozen in shock. With great gentleness, the deity reaches out and offers the young man an orb of pure, concentrated light from the world tree. Seoyul slowly reaches out his hand, feeling that mystical energy calling directly to his soul. Upon touching the glow, the young man is enveloped in a cocoon of comforting magic that washes away any trace of fear or weakness. The sacred light expands rapidly and begins taking the physical shape of a legendary, powerful, long-range weapon. The spiritual pact is forged, bathing the entire realm in a power capable of making the planet itself tremble in awe. Back in reality, the inventor breaks into a cold sweat as he sees the energy dome crack, realizing something impossible is happening. He shouts in panic, seeing the kid float wrapped in a golden pillar that is resonating directly with the great tree. Seoyul re-emerges amidst the panic with the stance of a relentless hero, radiating a destructive aura of pure green energy. In his hands now shines a giant golden bow, decorated with sacred carvings and emitting a blinding light of power. The young man pulls the magic bowstring, aiming an arrow of bright light directly at the center of the villain's forehead. His eyes now glow with a mesmerizing emerald tone, showing he is ready to blast the enemy into outer space. The inventor trembles upon recognizing the elven mark, realizing the young man possesses a truly legendary ancient relic. Instead of fleeing, the mad scientist cries with excitement as his theory is confirmed, celebrating that his research was right all along. The young man locks his aim while the bow charges a ridiculous amount of magic, whipping up a violent gale around him. The villain screams in ecstasy, realizing he is standing before a legendary being who managed to transcend all limits of the system. The arrow of pure magic energy pierces the villain's chest, leaving him gasping in despair after being caught off guard. The inventor lets out a scream of pain as he is blasted away from his beloved flying platform by the sheer force of the impact. The arrow then detonates directly on the cursed blocking device, completely obliterating that weird tech. A massive green explosion consumes the festival stage, purifying all the dark smoke that was choking the people. Choi Ji-hoon slowly opens his eyes while still on the ground, left completely speechless by witnessing that miracle. The young man looks up at the sky and spots Seoyul's majestic silhouette floating gracefully with his legendary bow in hand. The image of that young man bathed in pure divine light becomes etched into the rich heir's mind as a vision he will never forget. Sensing that the danger has finally passed, the young rich kid passes out from exhaustion with a sigh of relief amidst the debris. Bit by bit, the bow's radiance fades as our hero begins descending slowly toward the shattered ground. But the insane strain takes its toll, and Seoyul's body goes soft, causing him to lose consciousness once and for all. The young man plummets unconscious from the sky, caught gently by a soft, comfortable gust of wind and magical leaves. With the villain's defeat, the horrific red energy pulse vanishes from the map, and the sky returns to its usual radiant blue. Rescue teams and police finally manage to breach the area, racing against time to help the survivors. Paramedics confirm multiple casualties and are horrified to see S-rank professional heroes lying powerless on the ground. Outside, a man in a suit tries to stop a young blonde girl from entering, warning her that the environment is still dangerous. But the girl ignores him entirely, rushing forward with her bow in hand, determined to find the one responsible for this tragedy. She grits her teeth, knowing that cowardly attack could only be the work of the terrible masked scientist known as the Inventor. With tears of rage in her eyes, she vows to hunt down and defeat that monster with her own two hands. However, the girl suddenly freezes mid-step as she notices an unusual glow emerging from behind the roots of the great tree. A soft, spiritual melody echoes through the air as the emerald light seems to dance magically around the giant trunk. She takes a few more steps, completely spellbound by the welcoming energy that seems to spring directly from the earth. The girl stares in shock, unable to process the presence of such massive life force gathered at a single spot on the ground. Right in the center of the glow, she finds Seoyul lying peacefully while nature heals all his combat wounds. The young man is resting atop a massive magical clover mark that glimmers on the stone floor like an ancient protective seal. The scene is so gorgeous it looks like a painting, and the young blonde girl simply watches the hero breathe calmly in his deep sleep. Right then, a mysterious system error message flashes on the screen, indicating that a bizarre vaccine program has been triggered. After all this mystery, our MC finally opens his eyes slowly, returning to the real world bit by bit. He lets out a weary groan, feeling extremely confused and not quite understanding what is happening around him. The young man sits up on the bed with a massive headache and notices he is wearing standard patient clothes on a hospital gurney. Looking around, he notices medical equipment and realizes he ended up admitted to a modern hospital room. Touching his own forehead, he realizes that whole crazy fight with monsters was not just some hangover hallucination. He digs through his memory and remembers receiving a gift from a wonderful elven entity right in the middle of all the chaos. He also remembers perfectly using that insane power to blast the villainous scientist straight into space. Except the young man panics upon realizing the story has changed completely, and he did not unlock that S-rank status window after all. To make matters worse, the only thing stuck in his mind is the annoying sound of a critical system error alert. Lost in thought, he is interrupted by a sweet female voice suddenly asking if he has finally woken up. The young man gets a huge fright and quickly glances to the side, coming face to face with someone he recognizes very well from the book. Standing before him is a gorgeous young woman with long golden hair, wearing elegant attire and looking at him with intense curiosity. Her looks are drop-dead gorgeous, and she oozes that classic elite rich girl vibe that does not care about ordinary people. In shock, Seoyul accidentally blurts out the name Shinjia out loud, leaving the pretty girl intrigued by how he already knows her like that. He freezes completely, remembering she is the heiress to the world's largest financial conglomerate and an elite superhuman. In the original story, she was the #1 student at the academy, an unbeatable genius in both academics and martial arts. Being so proud, she could not accept the main character entering the school using a broken S-rank ability. Because of that, she became his biggest rival and also the primary female lead, constantly at odds with the young man. Seoyul desperately wonders why she is there, and the young girl smiles confidently, thinking it is only natural for him to know who she is. But his panic turns into pure confusion when the girl begins moving in a rather unexpected way. To the young man's surprise, the powerful and proud heiress simply drops to her knees in front of the bed, calling him ancestor. The MC nearly falls backward, making a weird face, completely unable to process the bizarre scene taking place. While he loses his mind internally, Shinjia declares with utter reverence that it is an honor to meet the great elven ancestor. Breaking into a cold sweat, Seoyul finally remembers that there was indeed a bizarre detail like that hidden in the novel's lore. According to the book's lore, 10,000 years ago, various magical races like dragons and vampires fought for survival. And amidst all that chaos, South Korea was home to the elves who lived under the divine protection of the World Tree. But our MC is utterly bewildered, unable to understand how on earth he ended up becoming the ancestor of this ancient race. Shinjia steps closer with a sweet smile, making the young man even more nervous with all that sudden proximity. With great gentleness, the wealthy girl points to his shoulder, calling him ancestor and indicating there is something there. Pulling back the collar of his gown, Seoyul gets a huge shock upon spotting a mysterious design glowing emerald green on his skin. The mystical design is shaped perfectly like a four-leaf clover, which is actually the legendary sacred mark of the elves. The young man stammers, unsure of what to say, while the girl warmly asks him not to worry about keeping that secret. She explains that the presence of this mark on his body is a top-secret matter guarded closely by the elite of her powerful family. The young girl smiles, telling him he does not need to hide his identity from her, leaving Seoyul stunned by the direction the story has taken. He realizes the girl is operating under a colossal misunderstanding, but he blushes bright red with her gorgeous face so close. Suddenly, she tenderly holds his hands, making our MC's heart race from nervousness right there in bed. She asks with glowing eyes if he was truly the one who defeated the terrible villain, saving everyone at the tree festival. Jia begins theorizing that he is the prophesied savior who awakened from eternal slumber to protect the world with elven magic. The blonde shares that she used all of her clan's resources to dig up data on him, but it was as if the young man had appeared out of thin air. Desperate, Seoyul lets go of her hands and tries to deny everything, saying that whole elven savior-hero story is pure madness. The girl steps back for a moment to grab a luxurious wooden case resting on the table in the room. She asks in a suspicious tone if he really is not an elf, while holding the mysterious box in her hands. Jia opens the lid slowly, revealing the precious content while the young man watches anxiously, wondering what is coming next. Inside the case shines a sacred family jewel called Forest Serenity, which is a truly powerful elven relic. Seoyul breaks into a cold sweat, unsure of what to do in front of that mystical artifact glowing with intense brightness in the hospital room. Suddenly, the young man gets a brilliant idea, thinking that if he holds the jewel and nothing happens, the misunderstanding will be cleared up instantly. He grabs the relic with complete confidence, daring the girl to watch as absolutely nothing special takes place. Except, to his misfortune, the jewel begins radiating a violent emerald light, making the young man widen his eyes in pure shock. Seoyul screams in panic, clueless as to why the object is reacting, while the blonde heiress watches in sheer awe. A massive wave of green power surges into the young man's body, triggering bizarre error messages on his invisible system screen. Right then, a light bulb goes off in his mind, and he remembers feeling this exact tingling sensation before passing out in battle. It was the exact same divine energy he used to manifest that massive bow and blast the crazy scientist away. The girl excitedly points out that the mark on his shoulder is glowing in perfect sync with the precious forest jewel. Jia is fascinated, praising her ancestor's power, while Seoyul panics inside, knowing this power was never in the novel. The young man sits in thought, staring at his own hands, unable to figure out how he reacted to the artifact without having the standard system. And above all, he realizes he needs to fix this situation, since that blonde girl is now looking at him like he is a deity. He remembers that the defeated villain was responsible for the death of Jia's mother, and in the novel she was only supposed to find out much later. Since the original script has gone completely out the window, the young man decides the best move now is to use the lie to his own advantage. He takes a deep breath and puts on a dead serious expression, pretending to be an ancient, powerful being to keep the act alive. With a stern look, Seo-yul commands her to keep absolute secrecy about everything she saw in that hospital room today. He arrogantly confirms that he is indeed the legendary elven ancestor who returned to guide his people on Earth. The young man makes up a story that her mother's soul woke him from his eternal sleep, and Gia bursts into tears, moved by the emotional tale. He adds that he used up a lot of power to take human form and asks for something to eat as his stomach growls loudly. The blonde leaps up, promising to bring the finest feast in the world for her beloved master, and rushes out of the room. Seo-yul lets out a sigh of pure relief as he sees the girl close the door, celebrating that his improvised plan worked like a charm. He looks at the relic in his hands, still in disbelief that he managed to trick the smartest heiress in the entire academy. Suddenly, a violent cybernetic glitch flashes before his eyes again, bringing back a sharp, unbearable pain. The young man groans in agony as the jewel slips from his fingers and lands on the mattress with colorful static sparks. He tries to recover from the shock, wondering what kind of bizarre rejection just occurred within his body. It seems the jewel repelled him out of nowhere, preventing him from using that magical power for too long in a stable way. Even so, the persistent tingling in his hand reminds him of the mysterious vision he had before blacking out completely. The images of the Elven Queen and the Arrow of Light feel way too real to have been just a hallucination or a dream. Seo-yul concludes that he did indeed use elven magic and suspects he gained a unique ability quite different from the novel. He pulls at his collar, staring at the mark, realizing he might be able to manifest the powers of other races in the world as well. Shin-jia suddenly enters the room pushing a luxurious food cart, asking sweetly if her ancestor waited too long. The girl bows, offering sincere apologies, while Seo-yul nearly loses his mind, thinking he will never get used to this royal treatment. He stares as the young woman sets things up on the bed, realizing how drastically their relationship has changed compared to the original book. The young man holds his breath upon noticing the blonde heiress's gorgeous face is dangerously close to his at that moment. With extreme gentleness, she serves a high-end soup prepared by the head chef of the Superhuman Academy himself. Seo-yul freezes completely with the spoon in his mouth, going into shock upon hearing the name of the place where he is admitted. He chokes slightly and asks in alarm if they are truly inside the famous and massive Superhuman Academy. The heiress simply gives that radiant smile capable of disarming anyone without even needing to use magical powers. As the young man enjoys the heavenly soup, the girl calmly walks toward the hospital room's large window. She pulls the curtains open all at once, letting a spectacular golden light flood the entire room triumphantly. Bathed in the brightness, our MC is left speechless with his spoon in mid-air, taking in the breathtaking view outside. With an angelic expression, the blonde turns back to him and offers an official welcome with all the warmth in the world. She majestically presents the legendary Superhuman Academy, rising grandly with the giant world tree towering in the background. The young woman explains that room belongs to the school's elite hospital, where the powerful Xinhua group offers top-tier medical care. Right then, a villainous smirk forms on Seo-yul's face as he realizes being here could make it much easier to follow the original plot. Without wasting time, the young man tosses table manners aside and begins devouring the food like a starving beast, leaving the girl in shock. Gia worries seeing him get up so fast, but the young man assures her he feels great and says he needs to speak with her immediately. He steps close with a serious, mysterious look, saying he needs to ask a very important favor of the young heiress. The scene cuts to the Academy's grand castle, glowing under the blue sky and surrounded by unreal, cutting-edge technology. Across the courtyard, female students gossip excitedly, confirming the rumor that the famous Shin-jia actually enrolled at the school this year. The blonde walks by looking stunning, drawing everyone's attention, but the students quickly begin swooning over the insanely handsome guy beside her. In the middle of the crowd, a few senior students recognize the young man and start whispering, intrigued by his presence there. The muscular Choi Ji-hoon glares at Seo-yul with a stern, irritated expression, looking like he wants to settle some past business. Completely ignoring the jealous glares, our MC gives a confident sly smirk as he walks along. Seoyul thinks to himself that the real game has begun, all while being watched from atop the building by two mysterious figures. On the roof, a cute girl wearing a manta ray hat celebrates excitedly upon seeing that all the freshmen have gathered down below. With an impressive leap, she throws herself into the air, floating with a glowing magical aura while the masked big guy just observes. The charismatic girl glides down smoothly, welcoming all the new students to the Academy's grand opening ceremony. She beams from ear to ear, wishing everyone there does their absolute best to become fantastic and powerful superhumans in the future. And so officially begins Kang Seoyul's chaotic new school life inside the most famous institution in the world. But the peace is short-lived, and soon the courtyard is filled with student whispers, pointing and laughing at something extremely embarrassing. Our MC struts along looking charming, thinking the compliments are for his unreal looks, while the girls sigh over him. Except reality hits hard when he discovers everyone is mocking the fact that his combat stats are the absolute worst rank possible. The young man drops to his knees, trembling in embarrassment as the panel confirms all his physical stats are a complete F-tier failure, all because the entrance exam is split into 3 parts, starting with the physical test where others show off insane strength-lifting weights. Then came the exhausting written theory test, where normal students had to fry their brain cells answering tough questions. And finally, the weapon aptitude test, where everyone had to demonstrate their magical combat abilities. Except for Seoyul. The first stage was a total disaster, with him nearly getting crushed by a light barbell and scoring an F in strength. In the agility test, the humiliation was even worse, with the poor guy tripping over his own feet and face-palming the floor pathetically. And to top it off, his magical power was also evaluated as F-tier, making the examiner look at him with pure pity. He falls into despair, remembering that in the original novel, the main character humiliated everyone with his S rank, but now he is just failing everything. The extras start mocking him, saying even their grandmother could beat up someone so weak and talentless. Seoyul loses his mind internally, screaming in frustration as he realizes his perfect plan to be the #1 student is totally ruined. Suddenly, he senses an overwhelming presence beside him and looks out of the corner of his eye with a bead of sweat dripping down his forehead. Shin-Jia steps up to take the test, radiating a massive amount of green spiritual energy that terrifies everyone in the room. The examiner updates the panel and announces out loud that the blonde heiress managed to hit an incredible B rank in magical power. The crowd goes wild over her insane score, since a level like that in the very first year is equivalent to the power of the instructors themselves. While the foolish guys think about hitting on her, others warn that she belongs to a completely different world and is totally out of their reach. Except, to everyone's total surprise, the untouchable goddess ignores the crowd and runs joyfully toward our failing MC. She flashes a radiant smile and waves super sweetly at Seoyul, showing that to her, her beloved ancestor will always be #1. Seoyul panics inside, mentally begging the blonde girl not to look at him with that puppy dog face like she just did something mischievous. To make matters worse, the other guys in the room glare at the young man with an extremely sinister look, thinking there is some secret romance going on between them. They start laughing out loud, theorizing that the clan heiress was actually mocking him for getting the absolute worst score on all the physical tests. Except the idiot's fun ends real quick when Shin-Jia herself walks in their direction, oozing a chilling and terrifying aura. One of the guys tries to be friendly, reaching out his hand to congratulate her on the outstanding top score she got on the magic strength test. With a deadly, dark glare capable of freezing the soul, the girl asks with absolute coldness why he thinks he can offer that filthy hand to her. The poor guy is hit by an insane wave of magical pressure and collapses to the floor in panic while our MC recognizes her true personality. Jia instantly switches to a gentle smile upon looking at Seoyul, who mentally thanks himself for forbidding the girl from calling him ancestor in public. Right then, the glasses-wearing examiner claps her hands, announcing the end of the physical tests, and warns that the next decisive stage is about to begin. The students are sent to classrooms where the grueling, exhausting general knowledge theory test officially begins. The strict instructor Fabius gives a speech up front, stating that having insane powers and giant muscles is useless if a warrior lacks the brain to use them. While the other students grumble quietly and fry their brains trying to answer, Seoyul tackles the test with absolute seriousness, pen in hand. The young man remembers that in the original work, this stage was not even detailed because the MC simply bulldozed through everything with his S rank. But since his situation is completely different now, he knows he must score a perfect mark on this written test to avoid further embarrassment. He starts answering questions at an insane speed, making the pen glide across the digital paper so fast it almost sparks. Suddenly, the young man pauses for a second, widening his eyes as he notices something surreal happening to his mind during the test. His hand simply cannot stop writing, and the classmate beside him stares in horror at the wild, focused nerd energy he is radiating. Seoyul realizes that because he read the original book hundreds of times, he literally knows every single answer and can indeed snag first place. Mid-test, Instructor Fabius catches a student cheating and slams the desk hard, scaring everyone with his imposing presence. The man with the distinct mustache warns that a true superhuman would never act so pathetically and disqualifies the cheater on the spot. The student attempts to beg for a second chance, weeping in despair, while the professor simply stares at him with a cold glare. With a simple magical gesture, the master seals the boy's lips with golden energy, ordering him to shut up and leave the room immediately. Fabius apologizes for the interruption, but Seoyul surprises the professor by raising his hand and calmly stating he has already finished answering all the questions. The instructor raises an eyebrow in surprise, unable to believe the guy with F-tier physical scores managed to finish the test so fast. He cautions the young man, saying that despite his terrible physical stats, he should not treat such an important exam with such carelessness and rush. However, the old man's jaw practically hits the floor upon reviewing the answer sheet and realizing there is not a single error on the entire test. As Seoyul stands up to leave the room with his head held high, the other students glare at him with a mix of jealousy and pure disbelief. Professor Fabius rushes to the door and shouts at the young man, demanding to know who he really thinks he is to act with such arrogance. The MC freezes for a moment, but tries to keep his composure, remembering the instructor's personality very well from the book's storyline. A mysterious, confident smirk forms on Seoyul's lips as he decides to use his knowledge of the master to his advantage. He turns around with a hero's posture and introduces himself out loud, declaring he is the man who will one day become the greatest superhuman of all. The young man meets the professor's gaze firmly and asks the old man to watch closely how much he will grow and evolve from now on at the school. The tactic works perfectly, and the instructor breaks into a proud smile, praising the young man's drive, which surpassed even his flawless test. The master accepts the challenge with arms crossed, while Seoyul walks off victorious, internally celebrating having won over the old man. He realizes that even without the legendary status window, his knowledge of the story's plot is the most powerful weapon he possesses. Shortly after, a commotion breaks out in the courtyard when the theory test scores are finally revealed, leaving the students in complete shock. Everyone shouts in disbelief upon seeing that first place scored a perfect 100, leaving even the genius heiress of the Shinhwa clan behind. Seoyul views the massive results board from behind the crowd, smiling proudly as he sees his name glowing at the absolute top of the theory list. That secures his temporary safety at the academy, leaving only the final decisive stage of the practical entrance exam to face. Suddenly, a guy with glasses and green hair appears floating, emitting strong, glowing blue magic energy from his hands. With an impressive move, he materializes a massive wall packed with medieval and magical weapons right in the middle of the testing hall. The students gasp in surprise, seeing that massive arsenal appear out of nowhere before their eyes like pure magic. The eccentric instructor with glasses smirks, announcing that the Academy's Grand Weapon Aptitude Test is about to begin right now. He explains that anyone who did not bring their own gear is free to choose any blade from the magical arsenal to take the exam. Seoyul falls deep in thought, remembering that the book's original MC used a one-handed sword, but wonders what the best choice for him would be. He recalls the battle at the sacred tree and considers that perhaps using a magic bow is the best option to pair with his new powers. Suddenly, Shinjia appears, whispering the word ancestor right in his ear playfully, making the young man jump in fright and turn bright red. The young man complains, flustered, begging her not to pop up out of nowhere, and especially not to call him by that mysterious nickname. The blonde just beams from ear to ear and praises the young man, saying it was only expected that her incredible master would take first place in theory. She whispers that he pretend to be weak on purpose in the physical test to hide his real godlike power, leaving the young man totally flustered. Shinjia surprises the young man by handing him a gorgeous, highly ornate bow, sweet-talking him into using that weapon for the test. The weapon glows intensely, showcasing perfect curves and a finish made from ultra-high-resistance metal with a deep magical sheen. Seoyul recognizes the legendary crazy expensive Elysium bow right away, making the blonde heiress burst with joy for nailing the gift. She smiles, saying she wants to see him show off his legendary skills so none of those foolish students dare underestimate her ancestor. The girl strikes a cute cheerleading pose, encouraging the young man with all her energy while he turns red with embarrassment at such cuteness. The young man awkwardly thanks her, holding the luxury bow as he tries to mentally prepare for his big debut in the weapon exam. Upon wielding the weapon, he feels an unreal lightness and incredible peace of mind, as if he had been shooting arrows his entire life. Suddenly, the young man's golden eyes flash brightly as he senses a weird, magical resonance emanating from the bow. He looks back startled, realizing his right shoulder is tingling and reacting with the exact same power as the sacred elven seal. Except his thoughts are abruptly cut off by a deep, intimidating voice calling out to him roughly from right behind. Turning around, the young man comes face to face with the muscular Choi Ji-hoon, who approaches aggressively, asking what his deal is at the school. Our MC freezes on the spot and lets out a tired sigh, wondering if that elite bully really decided to pick a fight right now. The big guy leans in, staring closely at the young man, roughly asking why he is hiding his true physical strength. The bully continues, saying dead seriously that he knows perfectly well who the warrior was that defeated that terrible terrorist villain at the festival. Seoyul widens his eyes in pure panic, swallowing hard as he hears the big guy reveal with complete certainty that the mysterious hero was him. The brute firmly repeats the accusation, leaving the MC sweating cold, clueless about how to dodge that dangerous interrogation. The young man panics internally, wondering if the bully actually managed to see him use that overpowered magic to blast the crazy scientist. Ji-hoon firmly grips the hilt of his massive sword, recalling the exact moment the young man performed a feat completely impossible to ignore. The bully recalls the surreal scene of the MC holding and swinging that massive heavy sword with just one hand amidst the chaos. He points at the weapon, explaining that the young man wielded a heavy piece of gear dropped during the previous fight without any effort. The big guy details that the iron greatsword requires at least A-rank physical strength to be lifted, and an F-rank failure could never pull it off. Ji-hoon crosses his arms in frustration, saying it was a shock to see the young man at the ceremony, but scoring an F on all physical tests was an obvious joke. He glares at Seoyul with hatred, demanding he drop the ridiculous act and reveal once and for all what his true motives are there. The bully still remembers the young man used a bow in battle, but Shinjia steps into the conversation, shoving his sword away with total attitude. The blonde heiress fiercely defends her beloved master, telling the big guy to shut his mouth and mind his own insignificant business. The two start arguing extremely aggressively, while Seoyul stands in the middle watching it all with a giant bead of sweat on his forehead. The MC realizes in panic that the heirs to the country's two largest financial conglomerates are about to throw hands right in front of him. Luckily, the big guy's allies come running over and hold him back before he loses control and wrecks the entire testing hall. Our MC holds Gia's shoulders, asking her to calm down too, while the blonde pouts cutely and crosses her arms. Right then, the green-haired instructor calls Choi Ji-hoon's name to step onto the testing stage and perform his practical combat demo. The young man walks confidently toward the arena, while his friends pat his back and wish him good luck on his performance. Gia complains angrily, saying the big guy is completely unbearable, and Seoyul laughs awkwardly, remembering the two were declared rivals in the original novel. He sits in thought, realizing the bully is way smarter than he seemed in the book, and that he needs to be extremely careful with his cover. The instructor evaluates the young man on stage, impressed to see he chose the heavy and costly black iron sword as his specialty. The master activates the system and summons an agile training robot, challenging the young warrior to show all the power he has stored up. The combat machine rushes at high speed toward the young man, who patiently waits in the arena, holding his massive sword tight. The two trade violent blows in the very first second of battle, creating a thunderous impact sound that echoes across the entire testing hall. The training bot attempts a swift kick, but the elite warrior uses his massive iron blade as a shield to block the attack with ease. With a powerful battle cry, the heir of the Suseong group channels all his physical strength and raises the greatsword to land the finishing blow. He lands a devastating vertical slash infused with blue magic energy, slicing the combat bot in half with terrifying ease. The audience goes wild over the young man's display of raw strength, commenting that the wealthy heir is not only good-looking but a monster in combat. The instructor logs the data, praising the young man's destructive power, but jabs that his technique is still way too rough for such a legendary sword. The big guy clicks his tongue, annoyed by the master's critique, while the other students around clap in awe at the show of power. Next, the examiner calls out over the loudspeakers, summoning Cadet Kang Seo-yul to present himself immediately at the center of the testing arena. Shinjia whispers joyfully, wishing good luck to her beloved ancestor, while our MC walks over trembling with nerves at the call. Upon arriving at the spot, he is greeted by a cranky female examiner wearing a stylish eye patch, who asks if he is indeed the famous Cadet Kang Seo-yul. She glances at her tablet with disdain, commenting roughly that he is the famous zero-score student who managed to get an F in all physical stats. The woman gives him quite a scolding, asking if the young man thinks the academy is a joke, since even a lazy person would get better grades with minimal effort. The young man lowers his head in apology, but focuses his gaze on the Elysium bow, remembering his elven mark reacted intensely upon touching the mystical object. He prepares with all the drive in the world, betting all his cards that the bow's fantastic energy will manifest right now in the arena. The cranky examiner warns that the standard target is at a ridiculous distance of 1,000 meters, disdainfully telling the young man to try hitting at least one shot. But the instructor's disdainful posture changes to an expression of pure surprise upon noticing the massive buildup of energy starting to form right there. Seo-yul draws the Elysium bowstring with resolve, causing an incredible aura of emerald green magical energy to swirl around his entire body. With a spectacular shot, he releases the mystical arrow that cuts through the testing field, tearing through the wind and leaving a brilliant, overwhelming trail in the air. The arrow strikes the target 1,000 meters away, right in the absolute center of the red mark, leaving all the spectators in the arena completely speechless. The young man celebrates his improvised plan's success, realizing the World Tree's blessing truly fused with his body in a divine way. The examiner stands baffled as to how someone weak achieved such an incredible result, while Seo-yul draws the bow again to make a second shot. He lets go of the string, and the second arrow flies at high speed, pinning with insane precision into the exact same distant target, stunning everyone. The foolish extras think he missed horribly because they can only see a single arrow stuck in the target, laughing and saying it was just beginner's luck. But bully Choi Ji-hoon steps in with arms crossed, asking if they are blind, sending the boys into panic with his imposing presence. The elite warrior orders the fools to look much closer at what actually happened to the bottom part of that target. The zoomed-in image reveals the second arrow pulled off the impossible feat of splitting the first one down the middle, pinning perfectly into the exact same center. The students drop into total panic with hands on their heads, unable to believe such legendary archery skill was performed right there. Shinjia clasps her hands with eyes beaming with pride, celebrating in awe and confirming that her beloved ancestor is indeed a living god on earth. Our MC assumes a powerful stance, locking his gaze on the target, preparing to show what a true elf is capable of in combat. With perfectly practiced moves, he fires another volley of magic arrows that fly toward the target like beams of emerald light. The arrows collide mid-air, splitting the previous ones with surgical precision that defies all laws of physics and probability. The panel displays all the arrows perfectly aligned and split right down the target's center, creating a green visual spectacle that lights up the arena. The senior students completely lose their minds, shouting in surprise upon seeing that flawless volley that no ordinary archer could ever pull off. The eye patch examiner runs toward the young man, grabbing his shoulder tightly, startling the MC with such a violent physical reaction. The woman bows, sincerely apologizing, and tearfully laments that the school's maximum allowed score for the weapon test is only A rank. She steps close with a flushed face, saying her instructor's heart hasn't pounded like this in years, making Seoyul fearful of her dangerous obsession. Ignoring the woman's craziness, the young man smiles, realizing the power of the elves is active and that he can do very well at school, even with low stats. The girls begin gossiping, saying he is a charming expert and that his handsome face definitely deserves an S-rank top score. Except Shinjia pulls an extremely jealous and dark face, grumbling that she doesn't like seeing so many people paying attention to her ancestor. The masked Pyo Jin-ho takes the floor, announcing the end of the exams, and thus the eventful academy admission ceremony wraps up without further issues. Later on, the new cadets receive their individual rooms, and Seoyul opens the door to his new quarters, left impressed by the luxury of the place. He celebrates upon realizing he landed a massive apartment all to himself, noting the place is infinitely superior to his old dump in the real world. The young man inspects the bathroom and almost falls over seeing a hot tub fit for a first-class 5-star hotel. He starts taking off his school uniform super hyped, planning to take a relaxing hot bath and sleep like a baby after that emotional day. Meanwhile, the scene cuts to the school's main hallway, where someone softly knocks on the impressive wooden door of the head principal's office. The masked instructor, Pyo Jin-ho, opens the door and steps inside dead serious, keeping his classic imposing stance of an elite soldier. He announces he brought an important report, and the young principal with the manta ray hat waves happily, welcoming the weapon master. The cute head of the institution rests her chin on her hands and asks with a playful smile if the info is about this school year's new students. The warrior confirms and reveals the matter is about a specific freshman named Kang Seoyul, making the principal recall the guy who got an F in everything. She adds, laughing, that he is the same cadet who aced the theory exam and received wild praise from the instructor in the practical bow test. The masked man confirms, and the young principal falls deep in thought, wondering if the mysterious young man is actually hiding his true power from everyone. She points her finger all hyped, thinking she discovered a big secret warrior, but the instructor shuts down the theory directly without sugarcoating it. He explains that the boy's strength is indeed F-tier, as his arms were shaking heavily from physical exhaustion while pulling the heavy bowstring. The master activates his blue magic eye, which glows intensely, reminding his boss that his special ability can see the absolute truth. The girl in the hat accepts the verdict, asking for Jin-ho's professional opinion on that student with low stats and insane talent. She seriously theorizes that the boy possesses at least the title of Divine Archer, or maybe even the legendary superior trait of Weapon Master. The cute, mysterious principal flashes an enigmatic smile, showing she found that whole situation extremely amusing and out of the ordinary. She says the case is super interesting and orders the masked instructor to start keeping a close eye on Kang Seoyul's steps starting today. The weapon master agrees and reveals he intended to do just that, placing the MC on the school's official intensive watch list. While the powerful decide his fate, our MC sleeps peacefully on his room's floor, snoring loudly without a single worry on his mind. The next day, classes begin, and the teacher with glasses kicks off the introduction to operations subject, explaining the 3 main duties of superhumans. She asks the class if any cadet can list these duties, and Shinjia immediately raises her hand, getting called on to answer on the spot. The blonde heiress answers firmly that the first two major missions of the profession are saving lives and the safe exploration of dungeons, and she wraps up her point stating that the third and most important duty of an elite warrior is the hunting and total elimination of the world's monsters and villains. The teacher agrees with Jia's perfect answer and warns the entire class that today's main focus will be the study of villains. She starts by asking if everyone in the room is already aware of the recent, terrible terrorist attack that took place at the festival. The projector displays an image of the dangerous Yahello, indicating the villain possesses the terrifying power to neutralize even S-rank superhumans. The master adds that if a mysterious hero had not stepped in, the attack would have caused a national-level disaster far worse. Seoyul breaks into a cold sweat hearing about his secret feat, feeling a heavy gaze directed at him straight from the back rows. Glancing sideways, the young man notices rival Choi Ji-hoon staring at him dead serious, but quickly looking away upon getting caught. Jia turns around too, winking super sweetly at the young man, who tries to calm down, thinking his school life should go smoothly after all. Meanwhile, the teacher adjusts her glasses and firmly declares that the sole main goal of that prestigious institution is to win. She assures everyone they will learn to defeat any threat and asks them to blindly trust their master's guidance. Seoyul gives an excited smile, knowing the next stages of the book's original plot are going to make his heart race with excitement. Suddenly, a cocky freshman named Choi Kang-im drops an arrogant joke, saying he would have sliced off the villain's head with ease at the festival. Our MC widens his eyes in pure shock upon hearing that familiar name, realizing the book's worst nightmare is right there beside him. The other students laugh at the joke while the arrogant freshman puts on a tough guy act, showing he fears no danger in the world. Seoyul swallows hard, staring at the smiling boy, knowing very well the awful bloody fate that awaits him in the novel's original script. He recalls that because of this boy, a literal bloodbath will take over the school hallways in the very first week of classes. Right then, the scene shifts to the next class, with masked instructor Pyo Jin-ho explaining that the lowest level of power is officially F rank. The panel details that F tier ranges from 1 to 99 points, indicating a massive gap in strength within the exact same category. The professor warns that because of this, the abyss separating the worst rank from S tier is simply colossal and almost impossible to overcome. While the master explains, Seoyul observes Choi Kang-im sleeping carelessly on the desk next to him, clueless about the horror approaching him. He recalls that in the original book, dozens of cadets lost their lives in a terrifying silent attack using a magical dagger in the middle of the night. The young man remembers the true killer is a mutant villain called Doppelganger who took out the freshman and stole his identity and appearance. The creature plans to unleash a cowardly massacre inside the academy, and Seoyul realizes that having this knowledge allows him to save the boy's life. He holds his head, trying to cook up a plan to get close to the freshman, but is cut off by the master calling his name out loud. The young man gets a huge fright, seeing that the dreaded masked instructor noticed right away that the student wasn't paying attention in class today. Seoyul stands up in panic, wondering if the professor decided to single him out just because he aced the written exam. The masked master orders the written test's top student to answer a crucial question to evaluate his true practical knowledge. The professor asks what the most important variables are in defining a warrior's power rank besides physical and technical stats. The MC thinks for a second with focused eyes, knowing the exact correct answer according to the strict rules of that world. He answers firmly and without hesitation that the fourth major variable capable of changing the whole course of a battle is the equipment used. The instructor is pleased, but decides to complicate the test to challenge the young man's intellect, activating a massive magic projection in the room. He displays the famous S-rank Sword of Levitation, revealing that its extra stats are just as terrifying as the requirements to use it. The masked master crosses his arms and throws out a challenging theory question for the whole freshman class to consider the strength dilemma. The professor asks who would win in a duel between a B-rank warrior with that legendary sword and an S-rank warrior using a regular weapon. Rival Choi Ji-hoon responds dismissively, saying the S-rank warrior would obviously crush the opponent without major trouble in battle. The bully arrogantly adds that a simple, pretty weapon wouldn't be able to overcome the colossal gap in physical stats. Instructor Pyo Jin-ho glares at the young man with crossed arms in an extremely rough, cold manner, making the cocky freshman swallow hard instantly. With total rudeness, the master asks if he had by any chance directed that question to him, leaving the bully red with embarrassment. The professor merely praises the boy's confidence, but shrugs nonchalantly while the rich heir grumbles in anger in his corner. The masked man turns back to Seoyul and asks if he agrees with the cocky guy's opinion or if he has a different theory regarding the duel. The MC takes a deep breath and puts on an extremely serious look, while the entire class of students watches him with intense focus and silence. He says he understands his rival's point, but firmly asserts that an S-rank warrior wouldn't emerge victorious in every real-life situation. The students start laughing at his face, mocking and whispering that the F-tier failure is just hallucinating out loud in the middle of class. Ignoring the class's mockery, the white-haired instructor raises his hand asking for silence and curiously asks the reason for that answer. Seoyul explains that while the stat gap is real, the abyss separating the power of a regular weapon from an S-rank magical weapon is absolute. He details that the regular sword would shatter on the first impact, leaving the S-rank warrior disarmed and creating the perfect opening for the opponent's victory. The professor is impressed, praising the young man's surgical vision, confirming to all students that the MC's answer is spot on. Gia celebrates with a thumbs up and a proud wink, while the master explains that a good superhuman needs to use all tools intelligently. The masked master wraps up the explanation, warning the entire class of freshmen to never blindly trust stats on their status screens alone. The whole class answers in unison in a military fashion, confirming they understood the professor's important message before wrapping up today's class. After the end of the first school day, silence fills the empty classroom, signaling that the first major danger is about to begin at school. Walking alone through the hallways, the MC reflects on how there are countless divine abilities and magic weapons scattered across this world. He knows that at the moment, he lacks that broken S-tier status window to bulldoze through all opponents with ease. However, everything points to the young man having gained a totally exclusive power, vastly different from any ability shown in the original book. It is a critical flaw in the world system that allows the young man to completely ignore level requirements to wield any legendary weapon. While thinking about what his top priority should be right now, the young man is suddenly interrupted by the sound of chatter in the hallway. Looking ahead, he spots freshman Choi Kang-im talking casually with a classmate in the middle of the school hallway. Seoyul immediately remembers he needs to somehow warn the boy about mutant doppelganger's terrible plan to save his life. He musters up courage and approaches directly, calling the freshman by name, leaving the boy totally surprised by that out-of-the-blue approach. The bully mocks his face, calling him an F-rank failure nerd, but Seoyul insists, saying he needs to tell him something of extreme importance. The two boys glare at the MC with an extremely irritated, impatient look, demanding he spit out what he wants once and for all. He thinks about how weird it would be to say the boy will be taken out in a week by an imposter monster who will use his skin to eliminate other students. The young man holds his forehead in panic, realizing that if he reveals the whole truth about the future, he will never be able to explain how he knows all this. With no other choice, he decides the best way out of the situation is to give a really lame excuse to try and change the boy's fate. With a serious look, our MC points his finger and sternly commands the freshman not to go to the casino under any circumstances this weekend. He knows the imposter monster plans to ambush him right there, but the bully's friend lets out a sigh, thinking Seoyul was going to confess his feelings to him. To the hero's bad luck, the freshman reacts extremely paranoid, thinking the young man is threatening to report his gambling addiction to the principal's office. The bully loses his temper, grabbing Seoyul by the collar, demanding angrily to know how he found out his secret about the casino. The brute snaps in anger, saying he already hated the hero and that he dug into his past to see if he had bribed someone to get top scores. Seoyul is baffled upon realizing it was the bully himself who dug into his life, while the aggressor keeps screaming in total rage. The freshman screams, spitting in anger right in the young man's face, jealous that he also wanted to hold hands and walk around with goddess Shinjia. The MC complains about the attacker's terrible breath, not even noticing that the blonde heiress herself just appeared right behind with a murderous aura. The girl grabs the bully from behind with a deadly glare, asking with complete coldness who in their right mind would want to walk with him. With a spectacular judo throw, the blonde heiress slams the brute onto the floor for not brushing his teeth and for daring to touch her ancestor. The cocky bully is left completely laid out and unconscious on the cold hallway floor, while the others watch it all in sheer shock. Gia turns back to Seoyul with the sweetest smile in the world, asking if he is okay, while the attacker's friend screams in panic in the background. Our MC makes a face of complete dread upon realizing the girl's insane strength and extremely jealous, violent personality. Choi Kang-im ends up admitted with his body and mind totally broken, crying endlessly on a hospital gurney with a neck brace. Despite the damage, no punishment was issued against Gia, leaving Seoyul terrified of the blonde heiress's family's colossal influence power. But at the end of the day, the hero realizes that with the freshman in the hospital, the terrible casino disaster was avoided and the future changed course. Even though relieved to save a life, the young man sits in thought, knowing full well the original sequence of events took a point of no return turn. He faces reality, knowing the story's script was completely altered and that new unknown dangers could pop up at any moment. Seoyul wonders if Doppelganger will simply give up or if he will just hunt a new defenseless victim at the casino to steal their appearance. He concludes someone needs to stop this monster and that the only one capable of using the book's knowledge to save everyone is himself. Suddenly, the young man snaps out of his thoughts, startled to hear the professor's official announcement echoing loud through the combat training room. Instructor Pyo Jin-ho points to the digital panel and coldly warns that Seoyul's next opponent in combat training will be Choi Ji-hoon. The master orders everyone to head to the practical training field, while the students whisper excitedly about the unfair duel coming up. The elite brute glares at the MC with a sharp look, and Seoyul deeply regrets having to fight the worst opponent right off the bat. He knows defeating his rival is an impossible task, since the bully's physical stats are at an insane level with A-rank strength. The young man looks at his bow, knowing that even if he fires hundreds of magic arrows, he won't be able to cause any real damage to his armor. The crowd starts mocking, saying the fight will be a free win for the elite warrior and envying his luck in catching an F rank. Seoyul walks dejectedly with his bow in hand, already accepting that his fate in the combat arena will be suffering a humiliating, painful defeat. He lets out a discouraged sigh, but masked Professor Pyo Jin-ho cuts him off midway, calling his name dead serious. To Seoyul's surprise, the quiet, mysterious master reaches out and hands a sharp combat dagger for the young archer to use in the test. The professor explains that even archers need to carry a dagger to defend against close-range attacks, maintaining his pose as an experienced leader. The young man thanks him, surprised, and moved to realize that behind that cold mask, the weapon master actually cares about his safety. The instructor orders the immediate start of combat and asks the two opponents to step forward, entering the magic barrier arena. They position themselves face-to-face in the blue arena, while the master warns that the anti-mortality safety system is fully active in the area. However, the professor gives a terrifying warning that the protective barrier won't stop them from feeling all the physical pain of every blow received. At the master's signal, the sparring match officially begins, and the two warriors prepare under the watchful eyes of the entire class. The timer starts ticking on screen, and Seoyul closes his eyes, channeling all the power of his elven bow, born from a system glitch itself. With the timer near the end, Kang Seoyul focuses completely on deciding the best strategy to survive this crazy showdown. As soon as combat starts, our hero runs backward, trying to create as much space as possible between himself and the opponent's giant sword. Kang Seoyul knows very well his only chance is keeping distance to attack the big guy from afar, using his magic arrows. He pulls the bowstring with all his resolve and fires a precise shot toward his rival, who comes charging like a wild bull. But brute Choi Ji-hoon completely ignores the attack and appears right in front of the young man with speed that looks like teleportation. The giant lands a devastating overhead swing with his monstrous sword, creating an impact that makes the entire arena shake. Choi Ji-hoon stands surprised that an F-rank managed to react to his strike, while poor Kang Seo-yul nearly loses his mind from fright. The MC ends up hitting the ground from the attack's impact, and his rival glares down at him intimidatingly, giant sword in hand. With a super suspicious look, the bully questions if the young man is truly an F-rank failure or if he is just hiding his real power. While Kang Seo-yul groans in pain on the floor, his rival wonders if he misjudged the young man's true strength during that first encounter. The young man looks at his trembling hands and realizes in despair that the gap in physical stats between them is an almost insurmountable abyss. Choi Ji-hoon raises his massive sword again, saying he overdid it a bit and promises to wrap up the fight quickly so as not to embarrass him further. The student crowd begins whispering and mocking the hero's weakness, saying he should drop out of the program out of sheer embarrassment. Hearing those silly jokes from the stands makes a massive rage and huge desire to pay back surge up Kang Seo-yul's spine. Knowing the arena barrier stops him from actually perishing, the young man decides to risk it all and braces for the opponent's next lethal blow. With a quick move, the MC pulls the dagger given by the professor and resolves to go all in against that A-rank monster. Kang Seo-yul lets out a furious battle cry and rushes forward with his kitchen knife, letting his eyes glow with a mysterious emerald light. But suddenly time seems to slow down, and an extremely soothing green energy begins floating around the startled young man's body. The young man grows confused upon realizing the entire scene around him simply vanished, leaving only a magical gale wrapping his body. He smells the same forest aroma as when he connected with the world tree, feeling a gentle breeze guiding all his physical movements. An elven spirit appears behind him, whispering for him to trust his body to the path of the wind and let himself be carried by this magic energy. Though surprised by that mystical voice in his mind, the hero's eyes glow intensely with the legendary emerald green energy of the elves. Thanks to this mystical connection, he can clearly see the red line showing the trajectory of Choi Ji-hoon's devastating attack. Right after, his own dagger begins glowing with a reddish light, revealing the perfect answer to stop the adversary's strike. He visualizes with precision the ideal line of cut capable of intercepting and completely neutralizing all hostility from the enemy attack. Totally focused and following the wind's flow, the young archer prepares to pull off a defensive move that defies all laws of physics. Kang Seo-yul throws himself toward danger and lands a precise slash in the air, clashing his small dagger against his rival's giant sword. The clash between the two weapons triggers a massive explosion of reddish sparks, leaving the battlefield completely covered in pure energy. Choi Ji-hoon is pushed back by the force of the counterattack, left stunned upon realizing his heaviest strike was easily repelled. The crowd drops into total panic, seeing that a mere F-rank managed to block an attack from a giant with A-level strength using just a dagger. While the students scream in shock at that impossible scene, Shinjia watches everything with a silly smile on her face, proud of her ancestor. The elite heir grits his teeth in total humiliation and hatred, realizing he was humiliated in front of the whole school by an ordinary guy. Even Kang Seo-yul himself stands staring at his small blade, unable to comprehend how on earth he just pulled off that legendary feat. But his opponent gives him no time to think and charges back with everything, spinning his colossal sword with even greater fury than before. The hero reactivates his elven, mystical vision, seeing dozens of red trajectories indicating the rival's brutal sequence of attacks. He begins moving like a true ghost, parrying every heavy rush of the giant sword with just small deflections of his dagger. The boy pulls a face of pure physical exertion, knowing that with his current strength, dodging and parrying strikes is the max his body can take. He realizes that if not for the mana field generated by wind power, his arms would have already been shattered by the impact pressure. The young archer keeps blocking the frantic sequence of blows with mastery, even struggling to endure the ridiculous weight of each clash. Sparks and clashing metal sounds echo endlessly across the training arena, leaving the audience watching the show wide-mouthed. The experienced white-haired instructor watches the duel with arms crossed, wondering if this truly is the young Kang Sioyul's limit. Choi Ji-hoon screams in rage, telling the young man to get out of his face while using all his physical strength to crush him with a final blow. Kang Sioyul gets a slight fright, feeling a sudden shift in the flow of mystical energy running through his mana channels during combat. He realizes that mysterious wind isn't coming from outside, but rather being generated and radiated from within his own body like a real aura. Determined to use this power's full potential, the boy resolves to hitch a ride on this magic gale and charges the rival at top speed. He manages to dodge the giant's heavy attack perfectly, sliding inside the opponent's guard with extraordinary agility. Choi Ji-hoon widens his eyes in pure dread upon realizing the F-rank boy managed to close the gap and is now face-to-face with him. The whole crowd holds their breath, and Shinjia herself clasps her hands, rooting for the young man's success as everyone watches the duel's climax. The MC lets out a weary sigh with the dagger already pressed against the opponent's chest, but realizes combat reality is pretty cruel. The young man laments upon noticing his current physical strength isn't even enough to scratch or pierce the elite heir's heavy armor. But in the end, reality hits hard, and Choi Ji-hoon takes advantage of the opening to land a brutal kick that sends our hero flying away. Poor Kang Sioyul hits the arena's hard floor on his back, arrows scattered everywhere, while his rival arrogantly celebrates the win. The sound system announces the immediate end of combat, declaring Choi Ji-hoon the grand winner to warm applause and cheers from the crowd. The MC scratches his head in pure frustration, hearing mean rumors from students who continue mocking his weak F-rank stats. At the top of the stands, the instructor's assistant comments in surprise on the boy's incredible skill in handling a dagger with such speed. She assumes the freshman forged his stats on the entrance test, but the experienced white-haired professor denies the theory right away. The masked master explains that Kang Sioyul's movements and reaction time were genuinely those of an extremely low-level warrior. He confirms the young man's stats are indeed terrible and concludes there is only one logical explanation for the boy pulling off that impossible defense. The instructor firmly asserts that the MC possesses a very powerful irregular trait, while the hero gives a thumbs up from afar. The master thinks that if the boy's stats were at a reasonable level, he could easily break into the top 10 warriors in the world. Now, on a sunny Saturday morning, our hero tries to recover his energy by enjoying a solid breakfast at the school cafeteria. He finds himself completely alone in the massive, empty cafeteria, imagining the other students must be out enjoying the sunny weekend. The young man feels his whole body aching from overdoing the parries he had to pull off in the violent fight against the big guy yesterday. But his biggest worry at the moment is Doppelganger, since he needs to quickly hatch a smart plan to stop this monster's sprees. He sighs, realizing that even knowing the book's future, trying to control everyone's destiny would be pure arrogance on his part. In the middle of his lonely complaints, the young archer gets a huge fright, hearing a familiar voice shouting for him right behind his back. Gorgeous Shinjia pops up super excited in her school uniform, asking curiously what her beloved ancestor is muttering about alone at the table. Kang Sioyul complains and politely asks her to stop calling him ancestor, but the girl doesn't even care about his protests and keeps smiling silly. She sits super close to him and sweetly says there is no problem calling him that since they are completely alone in the cafeteria. The young man turns flustered, and she reveals with admiration that she watched closely the thrilling duel he fought against his rival yesterday. He comments, laughing awkwardly, that he must have made a complete fool of himself, but the blonde girl disagrees immediately, saying the hero was marvelous. She gets hype, praising the fact that he parried all the giant's blows even while suppressing his legendary elven power to stay disguised. Seoyul tries to explain he wasn't hiding any power, but the heiress places her finger on his lips romantically, asking him to be careful. With flushed cheeks, the blonde warns that if other students discover this colossal strength, everyone will start coveting her ancestors' attention. The young man asks what the other students would do, and she quickly pulls her hand back, flustered upon realizing how close she was to the hero. She covers her embarrassment, stammering, begging once more for the young man to hide his true magical strength much more carefully from now on. The MC sits in thought with his hand on his chin, wondering what on earth the girl really meant by that exaggerated concern. He begins reflecting on his system glitch that lets him bypass all level requirements to freely equip any legendary item. The young man recalls that when using this skill with ancient relics, he ends up temporarily manifesting the creator race's abilities in his body. But the major issue with this glitch is the short time limit, as his elven power was violently cancelled after just 1 minute of combat in the arena. The hero lets out a discouraged sigh, realizing that to use this skill again, he will need to find rare relics that are nearly impossible to locate. Seeing his concern, Shinja steps close affectionately, telling her ancestor not to carry the whole weight of the world on his shoulders alone. With the sweetest smile in the world, she advises the young man to trust and lean on the strength of other people nearby during tough times. The girl's words echo in Kang Seoyul's mind, making him reflect deeply on the meaning of trusting and accepting help from allies. The blonde gets excited, firmly stating that there is surely someone very strong nearby, willing to lay down their life to help him on his journey. She points to herself, all proud, suggesting she could be that person, but the MC has a stroke of genius right at that moment. Suddenly, the young man places his hand on the girl's head, giving her a gentle head pat that leaves her completely frozen and blushing wildly from embarrassment. Seoyul thanks her smiling, saying her advice gave him the perfect idea of what to do, leaving the blonde heiress paralyzed like a statue. Without wasting time, our MC leaps up, saying goodbye to the girl and rushing out of the cafeteria to put his new plan into action. Poor Shinjia is left behind, touching her own head in sheer shock, heart racing, unable to process the young man's sudden affection. The scene shifts to a hill where an imposing stone memorial was built right beside the massive world tree dominating the landscape. At the memorial, various white flower wreaths, candles, and letters left by people mourning the tragic loss of brave fighters can be seen. A hand delicately places another white flower on the tomb in a sincere display of respect and grief for the victims of the terrible tragedy. A gorgeous red-haired woman wearing an elegant black dress and a large, chic mourning hat pays her last respects on her knees before the memorial. The mysterious lady in black stands up with a melancholic look and walks away while Kang Seoyul appears, walking right behind in absolute silence. The young man approaches respectfully, carrying a white flower in his hands, while watching the mysterious woman slowly walk away from the memorial. He kneels before the grave and wishes that the fallen members of the Baihan Guild may finally rest in peace after facing such horror. The boy laments out loud, saying how tragic it is to see 9 innocent lives cut short so cowardly because of a terrorist attack. Upon hearing the boy mention that 4 other people passed away the previous week in the same tragedy, the woman stops walking and turns around shocked. Kang Seoyul realizes he caught the powerful black-clad warrior's attention and calmly turns around to start the conversation that could change his fate. The beautiful woman stops walking immediately and turns around with an extremely serious expression, asking what the boy just said about the tragedy. Kang Seoyul stands up with a friendly smile, saying he can hardly believe he is face-to-face with Yu Hua, the grand leader of the famous Baihan Guild. He analyzes the woman's flawless posture and deep sorrow over the loss of her comrades, but she merely cuts him off coldly. With an extremely intimidating gaze full of fury, the leader demands to know where the young cadet managed to obtain such classified info. Our hero swallows hard, feeling a terrible chill run up his spine upon realizing that woman's presence is infinitely more terrifying up close. He tries to stay calm and takes a deep breath so as not to show his dread before that ruthless leader who seems ready to strike at any moment. With absolute seriousness, the young man reveals he knows perfectly well who the real culprit behind the awful loss of her comrades is. He looks her straight in the eyes and asserts with total conviction that he can help her capture the culprit if she agrees to hear his strategic battle plan. The redhead steps forward disdainfully, warning him that he is just a rookie student and should think twice before messing with the wrong person. Yuhua grits her teeth, officially introducing herself as the leader of the Bihon Guild, asking roughly if he can really handle the consequences. The MC lets out a sigh, knowing full well she wouldn't believe him right away, so he decides to appeal to information only the attacker would know. Eyes glowing in a focused golden tone, the hero begins revealing secret details of the culprit who took the lives of her guild members. He states flat out that the terrible culprit is a mutant villain named Doppelganger, leaving the leader completely shocked upon hearing that name. The woman widens her eyes, unable to comprehend how a simple academy student could know the secret name of such a dangerous, mysterious monster. Seoyul gives a slight smile, asking if that revelation is enough for her to believe him, but has no time to react before being caught off guard. With insane speed, the redhead rushes the young man and projects a sharp magic blade directly against the startled MC's throat. The young man drops into total panic, begging for his life, while she demands to know who he really is and accuses him of approaching her on purpose. The boy recalls this is Yuhua's unique ability to instantly materialize mana weapons, making her an extremely lethal opponent. With the glowing blade pressed against his neck, she demands to know his real objective, and Seoyul screams that he only wants to help capture the monster. He desperately explains that if they don't stop Doppelganger now, the monster will invade the academy next week and cause a horrific massacre. The hero appeals to the leader's emotional side, asking if she will simply let that awful tragedy from last week repeat itself with others. The boy begs for a vote of confidence, assuring that if they follow his plan to the letter, they can ambush and defeat the monster once and for all. Yuhua glares at the MC with deep doubt, carefully evaluating whether she should trust those wild words from that cadet. Silence takes over the stone memorial as the wind blows softly over the white flowers left in honor of the fallen warriors. After a few seconds of intense tension, the Bihon Guild leader makes her final call and decides to lower her dangerous magic energy blade. She agrees to give the boy a shot and demands to hear the details of this wild plan, making the hero internally celebrate convincing her. Relieved not to have his head sliced off his neck, our MC flashes a friendly smile and prepares to lay out his action strategy. He steps close and whispers in the leader's ear, saying their plan will officially kick off tonight, at exactly 8 o'clock at the agreed spot. The scene then cuts to early night where firm footsteps walk over the luxurious carpet of one of the busiest spots in town. The location is a massive, noisy casino packed with bright lights and dozens of slot machines running full steam in the main hall. Roulette wheels spinning and the distinct sound of betting chips echo everywhere, revealing the perfect setting for those who like to gamble. Kang Seoyul enters the casino wearing his school uniform with total calm, drawing curious looks from suit-wearing security guards in the background. The young man walks through the fancy hall and spots Yuhua disguised from afar, wearing a gorgeous party dress while drinking champagne and scanning the room. The redhead watches the hero with curiosity, wondering who he really is to act on his own and risk his life without asking for anything in return. Suddenly, the chubby casino owner pops up all flattering to welcome the famous Bihon Guild leader, making the redhead a bit annoyed by the flattery. The man offers to guide her to the VIP section, but she coldly lets him know she prefers to stay and just watch the floor. Elsewhere on the floor, our MC snaps his fingers with a confident smile, getting ready to launch stage 1 of his secret mission. The young man's main goal is finding the serial killer monster Doppelganger before it manages to make its next victim at the venue. The hero knows finding the disguised monster amidst that crowd won't be a tough task since he has all the info from the original book. He recalls the book detailed the villain's weakness perfectly and how to spot its bizarre disguise simply by watching its quirks. To draw the monster out of the shadows, the boy realizes he needs to pull off a loud move and decides to stack up a massive pile of chips. His intention is to capitalize on the fact that the villain plans to disguise himself as Cadet Choi Kang-im to infiltrate the Hero Academy. With that, the MC plans to draw the monster's attention to himself, causing the imposter to attack him instead of the plan's original target. In other words, the young archer decided to adopt an extremely dangerous tactic and sits at one of the betting tables with a super-focused look. The young man decides he will be the perfect bait to draw the killer, positioning himself right at the center of the gaming table under the gambler's eyes. He flashes a bold smile and tosses his chips on the table, silently daring killer doppelganger to bite his shiny bait. Some girls watching the game are completely blown away by the hero's brilliant plays, whispering compliments about his skill. The boy stacks up piles and piles of valuable chips, leaving everyone around jaw-dropped, unable to understand how that young student wins so much. He watches a bald man weeping in despair over losing all his cash, starting to wonder if he happens to have a natural talent for gambling. An annoyed gambler points his finger, telling the kid to go study instead of betting, but the hero just laughs, having made so much off Yuhua's cash. Saoyul realizes he drew tons of attention and silently celebrates, knowing the terrible disguised killer has surely noticed his striking presence. Suddenly, a mysterious man appears out of nowhere and grabs the young man's wrist tightly, interrupting his celebration and scaring the boy. The enraged man loudly accuses the MC of cheating in the game, using his superhuman cadet skills to steal the chips. Saoyul tries to deny the accusation right away while analyzing the attacker, wondering if that angry customer in a cap is actually the monster itself. The scene starts drawing worried looks from everyone on the floor, and the MC complains about that aggressive attitude while trying to break free. But the commotion is cut short by the arrival of a massive security guard in a suit and dark sunglasses, demanding to know what's going on. The brute in a suit orders the young man to come with him to a private room, and our hero accepts right away, laughing in relief to leave that mess behind. The gambler in a cap celebrates the young man's exit, thinking he will finally get his deserved punishment, not noticing the boy walks with total ease. The guard and the MC walk side by side down the quiet casino hallways, moving further away from the deafening noise of the gaming tables. Saoyul laments silently, thinking this unexpected approach by the guard ruined stage 1 of his capture plan. But suddenly the guard warns that for safety rules, cadets and superhumans must play in totally separate areas to avoid bigger issues. The young man stops walking immediately upon picking up on a crucial detail in the guard's statement, preparing to reveal the truth behind that disguise. Without showing any sign of fear, the MC slowly turns around and directly asks if the brute is actually the terrible killer doppelganger. The imposter disguised as a guard plays dumb, but praises the boy's composure, realizing he really isn't an ordinary F-rank strength cadet. The hero flashes a victorious side smile and warns his opponent that trying to fool him is useless since he can see the whole truth with his eyes. He explains a real guard wouldn't ignore his supposed cheating and questions why the brute completely ignores rules with others. The young cadet firmly adds that the villain's biggest mistake was keeping his eyes locked on his face during the entire walk down the hallway. He reveals he knows the monster needs to stare at a victim's face for exactly 1 minute and 40 seconds to copy their physical look. Realizing he was completely exposed, the monster cracks a psychotic, terrifying smile with sharp teeth, demanding to know who that kid is. The guard's entire presence shifts into a terrifying dark silhouette with glowing eyes, confirming he is indeed the dangerous serial killer. Saoyul swallows hard, feeling the crushing pressure of that evil aura, but mentally prepares to execute the next part of his clever act. The young archer recites out loud an ancient, mysterious Latin phrase that serves as the secret motto used by villains serving his same boss. The disguised villain widens his eyes in pure shock upon hearing that secret motto that should never be known by a mere academy student. Pretending to be an ally, the young man boldly reveals he was just waiting to be approached, as he carries an important direct message from the boss. The imposter stands completely speechless and frozen, trying to process if that young cadet before him is actually an undercover agent from the organization. The brute closes his eyes, accepting the logical explanation, and assumes a much friendlier posture upon realizing the boy supposedly serves the same boss. He laughs, confessing he found it odd the boy figured out his disguise so fast, but now it all makes sense if they are truly on the same side. The giant in a suit gives a friendly pat on the hero's shoulder, celebrating the partnership, and warns that his secret faction's boss is waiting to talk. The MC side smiles, mentally celebrating the success of his wild act, while the monster warmly warns them to head over right away. Seoyul is surprised to learn the supreme faction leader himself is at the venue, realizing he has the ideal chance to land a big fish. In the background, the night continues quiet and mysterious outside the luxury casino that hides awful secrets and conspiracy plans in its shadows. The two step into a luxurious private casino lounge packed with plush, dark leather couches, but the young man notices the place is completely empty. The hero asks if their boss shouldn't be there waiting, and the monster calmly replies he was merely following the direct orders he received. The villain assumes Seoyul will be responsible for infiltrating the academy in his place, and the MC simply agrees in silence to keep his cover. The big guy flops casually onto one of the leather couches, excitedly wondering what his next thrilling assassination mission in the city will be. Our hero lets out an awkward laugh, trying to mask his disgust, realizing with boredom that the dangerous monster actually loves to run its mouth. The villain laments with envy, saying he'd love the chance to slice up those academy cadets and hopes to get another mission full of chaos and violence. He starts boastfully bragging, fondly recalling how extremely fun it was to slash and dice each of those Bihan Guild members under Yu Hua. The monster laughs, revealing how he got close to the victims by perfectly copying their leader's physical look, making them fall without fighting back. He lets out a hysterical laugh, getting a kick out of the fact that the victims met their end, believing they were being taken down by their beloved guild leader. With a cold expression of deep disgust, Seoyul sighs and asks out loud if all that sadistic confession serves as sufficient proof of the crime. The disguised guard grows totally confused by that bizarre question and quickly turns around, trying to figure out who the kid is talking to. Suddenly, the real Yu Hua appears right behind the villain amidst mysterious blue flames, radiating an expression of pure fury and bloodlust. With a clean, overwhelming slash of her mana blade, the leader severs the imposter's arm in the exact same second, spraying dark blood all over the leather couch. Doppelganger screams in pure agony, clutching his bleeding stump, staring at the redhead in sheer terror, unable to grasp how the real leader found him there. The redhead radiates a terrifying, murderous aura, holding her bloodied sword, coldly reminding him that 4 of her brave comrades fell because of him. With eyes glowing with lethal intent, she promises the villain he will pay dearly and that he will be taken down 4 times today by her own hands in battle. The injured villain screams in rage, accusing Seoyul of betrayal, desperately demanding to know how a simple student learned his secret faction's motto. Showing total contempt for the enemy, the hero merely scratches his ear dismissively, mocking that he hasn't the slightest clue what the villain is talking about. Doppelganger grits his teeth in fury as dark, creepy smoke begins emanating from his wound, bracing for a lethal counterattack. Doppelganger lets out a deafening screech of pure agony as blood splatters everywhere from the relentless fury of the redhead's attack. Desperate and blind with rage, the monster uses its remaining hand to try and rush Seoyul, swearing to eliminate him right then and there. Our young hero gets a huge fright from that sudden rush and backs off startled, eyes wide before the deadly danger right in front of him. But in less than a second, he regains his posture and displays a mocking smile of victory, making it clear the villain's plan would never work. Before the monster can lay a finger on the boy, Yu Hua masterfully intercepts the attack, landing another swift, precise slash with her magic blade. The villain falls face first onto the floor, groaning in pain, and Seoyul mocks him, saying a cowardly killer focused on ambushes doesn't stand a chance in real combat. The leader stomps hard on the monster's head, reminding him his opponent now is simply one of the most powerful superhumans in all of South Korea. The redhead coldly warns she will show zero mercy, reminding him he still needs to fall 3 more times to pay for every life he took from her guild. Seoyul waves casually and warns he is heading out, leaving the two alone so they can have a very intimate, painful quality moment. but before he can take a step, the redhead tosses a magic dagger that grazes his hand and pins into the wall, scaring the young MC. She remarks that the boy truly kept his promise to bring the killer to her, realizing the young cadet is far more mysterious than he appears. The Baihan Guild leader stands intrigued upon noticing he even knows the enemy organization's secrets, which totally shifts her view of the boy. With an extremely serious, intimidating expression, the powerful woman demands to know who he really is and where all that forbidden knowledge came from. She keeps pressing down on the defeated monster's body while pointing her sharp blade at the boy, demanding clear answers about his identity. The MC swallows hard, trying to keep control of his emotions under that insane pressure, thinking fast to come up with a convincing excuse. He politely asks her not to ask tough questions and reminds her that in the end, it was thanks to his plan that she managed to capture the monster. The young man assures with total sincerity that he is not part of that evil cult of villains and asks her to trust his true intentions. He promises he won't run away anywhere and suggests the leader should first focus on resolving the monster's situation, who continues squirming on the floor. With a friendly smile, he lets her know he'll be waiting outside the casino, opening the door to let the redhead handle her score settling. The boy steps out of the private room and quietly closes the door, leaving the relentless warrior alone with Doppelganger in the dark hall. Yu Hua watches the door close, wondering with extreme curiosity who that young cadet, acting with such intellect and coldness in battle, could be. Outside, our hero leans his back against the door, letting out a massive sigh of relief for surviving that terrifying conversation. Time passes, and the cold night fog covers the massive casino building's front, while police finally arrive to arrest the criminal. Seoyul sits tiredly on the building's steps, holding a mysterious paper bag in his hands as he watches the busy patrol car movement on the street. The young archer shifts his gaze to the side attentively upon noticing the officer's movement with the prisoner is about to begin. The guards come out carrying a completely bloody, disfigured doppelganger, who tearfully begs to be finished off already to end the pain for good. The boy watches the scene in absolute silence, surprised by the quiet arrival of gorgeous Yu Hua, who appears right behind him with a much calmer gaze. He turns sideways to greet the Baihan Guild leader, who now wears an elegant black party dress and exudes an extremely powerful presence. A police officer comes running over, worriedly asking if she is okay, but the redhead responds roughly, asking not to be interrupted while talking to the boy. The guard apologizes, bowing in respect, and Seoyul takes the chance to ask if she really decided to hand the injured criminal over to local authorities. The redhead sighs in relief, confirming she managed to vent all her accumulated rage, praising the hero for acting with such composure and intellect in the plan. She explains that keeping the villain alive will bring far more political benefits for the guild now that they know he belongs to that feared secret organization. The woman looks curiously at the paper bag, asking what the boy is holding so carefully in his hands since stepping out of the casino. With a friendly smile, he holds out the paper bag, revealing he was just waiting for the ideal moment to return the redhead's valuable belongings. He reveals he used the money borrowed from her for the casino bets and managed to multiply the initial sum, leaving the leader completely jaw-dropped in shock. The redhead stands baffled, seeing that he intends to return all that fortune, and the hero assures his sole true goal was capturing the monster. He adds with a side smile that winning the trust of such an influential guild leader is something infinitely more valuable than any money. The boy looks directly at the woman and asks straight out if, with this success, she is finally willing to trust his intentions a bit more. The beautiful red-haired leader remains silent for a few moments, holding the bag of money, fondly weighing the mysterious cadet's words. She reaches out, insisting he accept that as a fair reward, since he was the one who orchestrated the entire capture and let her get justice. Seoyul tries to modestly decline, but the redhead stubbornly insists, asserting it makes zero sense for him to walk away with no reward at all. The young archer stands a bit confused and thoughtful at the woman's persistence, trying to imagine what kind of reward would be ideal for his growth. The MC flashes a smart smile, asking if instead of money he could ask a special favor to aid his development as a hero. The redhead breaks into a beautiful, genuine smile, accepting the proposal instantly, promising on behalf of her guild to grant whatever wish the boy has. She gestures proudly, assuring the boy can ask for literally anything he wants, and the hero rejoices seeing his final play worked out perfectly. Sometime later, massive metal doors begin opening grandly in an underground location of the city, revealing a well-lit secret entrance. The MC lets out a gasp of surprise and awe, seeing what lies inside, while the redhead smiles proudly, leading the way for the young cadet. They officially enter the Bihan Guild's secret vault, revealing a massive, luxurious hall packed with glass displays protecting priceless treasures. The redhead explains the place is loaded with rare relics accumulated over years in dungeons, revealing he is the very first outsider granted access to that vault. She extends her arm generously, ordering him to pick any item he wants, making it clear he is completely free to take whatever he likes from there. But surprisingly, our MC rejects the offer to take multiple things, modestly stating a single item will be plenty. Yu Hua asks if he'll truly be satisfied with so little, while Seo Yul begins digging through the vault's cabinets in search of his real prize. He remembers that due to a status system error, he can equip any weapon in the world, but his usage time limit is just 1 minute. But the boy knows perfectly well that ancient relics are the one big exception to that annoying time limit rule imposed by the world system. Eyes beaming with hype, he announces he finally found the perfect item he was looking for, leaving the redhead quite intrigued by his choice. He opens a metallic briefcase, revealing 2 grand, imposing golden gauntlets with sharp claws that look like they belong to a legendary hero of the past. The leader asks if he's sure he only wants those gloves, and the boy confirms smiling, knowing full well the item's power is absurd. He knows those are the legendary Fierce Tiger Gauntlets, an ancient relic of rank B+, impossible to purchase anywhere with regular cash. The MC recalls that ancient relic-grade items are infinitely more special and powerful when compared to regular equipment. These weapons carry the attributes and special traits of whichever race crafted them, like the flawless agility of elves or raw strength of dwarves. For regular folks, these items are just completely useless collectibles since usage is restricted to members of that creator race. But with his unique skill that ignores any usage restriction, the hero will be able to use the gauntlets and temporarily absorb the beast's traits. He inspects the item, recalling the gauntlets feature 2 terrifying extra skills that dramatically boost his offensive power in close combat. He smiles satisfied, knowing that even with the time limits of his broken system, this gear will still be extremely useful for fights. Holding the metal case firmly, the boy politely thanks the Bihan Guild leader for her generosity in allowing access to that vault. The redhead shrugs casually, joking about the boy having a weird taste for useless antiques, confessing she can't understand his mind. The boy watches her in silence as he packs away his powerful new legendary weapon, feeling huge admiration for the beautiful warrior's willpower. He recalls that in the book, she had shut herself off from the world after losing her allies, and feels glad to see she can still smile genuinely like this. Suddenly, their conversation is cut short by the hurried arrival of a man in a black suit who comes running into the place, calling for the leader in panic. The redhead turns calmly, remarking her subordinate has finally arrived, while the MC watches the suit-wearing man approach. Secretary Kim Shin-woo asks frantically if the leader is okay after facing the killer alone, and she replies with total calm that she doesn't have a scratch. He questions how she pulled off that impossible feat, and the woman points to the MC, revealing it was all thanks to the young man's brilliant plan. The secretary shoots an extremely cold, suspicious, sharp glare towards Seo Yul, making it clear he didn't like the boy's presence one bit. Our MC maintains his friendliness and introduces himself politely, despite feeling a very strange, dangerous aura coming from that suit-wearing subordinate. He activates his knowledge from the original book and identifies Secretary Kim Shin-woo, remembering the man is second in command of the guild and a master swordsman. Yu Hua places her hand on her secretary's shoulder with a gentle smile, letting him know the cadet boy is someone extremely trustworthy and that he can relax his posture. The swordsman bows, apologizing for his lack of manners, and mentions he will head out to prepare the official statement they'll give to the press. The redhead apologizes to the boy for her secretary's cold behavior, lightheartedly commenting that he is just a very direct, serious man. The young man puts on an extremely serious face and warns the Baihan Guild leader that he will also be very direct with her regarding an imminent danger. Without sugarcoating it, the MC reveals to the woman that her trusted secretary is actually an undercover spy working for the enemy villain cult. Yuhua widens her eyes and turns pale with shock upon hearing the boy assert with complete certainty that her right-hand man in the guild is a lying traitor. Seoyul knows very well. Kim Shin-woo is actually a ruthless villain, far more dangerous and cruel than even Doppelganger, whom they captured today. He recalls that in the original book, the secretary pretended to be an ally only to later backstab Yuhua at the most vulnerable, painful moment of her life. The redhead asks in alarm what real proof the boy has for such an accusation, and the hero promises he will make him fall before it's too late. The MC steps close and whispers the traitor's dark secret into the leader's ear, leaving the redhead completely horrified by the details. He asks her to be very careful and says goodbye to the warrior, turning his back and calmly walking out of the guild's underground vault after delivering his warning. The boy walks back toward the exit, sweating cold, wondering if he made the right call revealing such a dangerous secret from the original book. The night rolls on quietly, and lights turn on across the Hero Academy's massive campus as our hero finally returns to his room. Completely exhausted, the young man flops onto his bed, letting out a shout of relief for finally ending that terribly long, tiring day. He looks at the ceiling, consoling himself with the fact that he managed to defeat Doppelganger and even scored that legendary rank B+ gauntlet as a gift. The boy closes his eyes, remembering Yuhua's face, happy to have won the trust and friendship of one of the strongest heroines in the story. He sits up on the bed with a thoughtful look, quietly reflecting if he is truly walking the right path to change that world's tragic fate. The hero flashes a confident smile, remembering he possesses all the knowledge from the original book and is using that info to make the best calls. Determined to keep evolving, the boy reaches out and pops open his mysterious briefcase's metal latch with a crisp click echoing through the empty room. He stares at the grand golden gauntlets, realizing that with this new gear, he can finally kick off his next ambitious training plan. The young archer displays a victorious smile on his face as he mentally prepares to face the next dangerous challenge awaiting him tomorrow. The scene shifts to reveal a gray aerial view of a totally destroyed city covered in concrete rubble following some mysterious disaster. Deserted streets and completely ruined buildings showcase the terrifying backdrop of one of the most dangerous dungeon areas avoided by regular hunters. Amidst the ruins, an imposing golden portal emerges, glowing intensely with pure energy, indicating the entrance to the dreaded Golden Sanctuary dungeon. Holding his heavy metal case, the hero walks along tiredly, bow on his back, complaining about his awful F-rank stamina that leaves him drained so fast. But either way, our MC thanks the heavens for managing to pull off his search so quickly and without major trouble in town. Kang Seo-yul arrives before a golden portal and quietly celebrates locating that secret dungeon entrance with such ease. He knows that is the Golden Sanctuary dungeon, a rank D location totally forgotten and avoided by other bounty hunters. With a mischievous smile, he resolves to do a final check on his gear and weapons before taking the first step inside the portal. Gripping his elven bow firmly, he immediately feels the warm, protective energy of the World Tree's blessing flow through his body. The young man decides to also test his close-range combat, pulling his trusty metal dagger to ensure everything is working flawlessly. He spins the dagger stylishly in the air, feeling the blade resonate with his own elven mana, prepping for the hidden dangers in the dungeon. In the exact same second, his Path of the Wind passive skill triggers automatically, making his eyes glow in an intense green tone. To complete his arsenal, he still carries the case containing the powerful fierce tiger gauntlets gifted by Yuhua the previous day. Completely confident and armed to the teeth, the young cadet crosses the golden portal, believing this forgotten dungeon will be just a bonus level. He reflects that the low-rank rating of this place is totally wrong, since nobody ever found the true secret hidden within. The young man arrives at a massive circular hall with ancient beast carvings. Recalling the dungeon was rated minimal difficulty by the association. But what regular folks don't know is that there is a secret activation mechanism hidden way up high in that dark stone hall. He stretches his arm and precisely slots a glowing golden sphere into a hidden wall crevice, triggering a metal snap that activates the gears. The young hunter explains, smiling, that there are secret entrance requirements to unlock the true rewards hidden in the dungeon. The moment the golden sphere slots in, the temple floor begins shaking violently, and a massive dust cloud sweeps across the place. The MC watches hyped as the grand wolf statue in the hall crumbles into stone bits, revealing the true secret entrance to the dungeon. The golden energy orb glows intensely, indicating the temple's ancient protective seal was finally broken after centuries of containment. A colossal dark passage opens beneath the wolf statue's debris, revealing the true, dangerous underground maze that existed there. Seoyul displays a greedy smile, knowing from his book memories that the Golden Dungeon's true challenge is about to begin. But before he can take a single step, the ground gives way completely under his feet out of nowhere, catching the young cadet off guard mid-hall. The poor boy plummets in freefall through the dark pit in panic, letting out a scream of terror while trying to hold on to his case. He lands violently on his back against the hard floor of the underground maze, letting out a painful groan from the brutal impact of the unexpected fall. The MC tries to stay calm despite the awful pain in his back, reminding himself he needs to act smart to survive there. The young man recalls there are rank A lethal traps and dangerous monsters hidden around every corner of that dark maze, but keeps his confidence. He knows he can easily disarm each trap using his elven arrows and dodge monsters without taking unnecessary fights. His intention is simply to slip right past the dungeon guardian unseen to grab the endgame legendary treasures without a scratch. The young man thinks that in case of extreme emergency, he can use his golden gauntlets, but is caught off guard by a trap hitting him from behind out of nowhere. The boy is hurled with extreme violence against the dungeon's stone wall, losing his balance and falling into a new, dark, unknown hole. Seoyul plummets, tumbling down a steep ramp of loose stones in the dark, letting out desperate screams while losing control of his weapons. He slams into various old wooden structures that shatter under his body's violent impact, leaving the poor young man severely banged up. The young archer lands face first onto the dirt floor brutally, kicking up a massive dust cloud while trying to gather his strength. He keeps rolling downhill through a dark, narrow cavern crevice, unable to grab onto anything during that crazy descent. The hero slides at top speed down the sharp stone slope, letting out a painful cry before violently crashing into the bottom of the crevice. He pushes himself up on his knees, gasping for breath, body covered in scrapes and bruises, clueless about what kind of weird trap hit him. The boy looks around frantic, clothes torn, realizing in terror that his precious elven bow fell somewhere far out of reach. The MC pulls a face of pure physical suffering, but quickly realizes he has an infinitely worse problem to solve in those depths. He finds himself completely alone and cornered in the absolute pitch black of that deep cavern, unsure exactly which part of the maze he landed in. The young man struggles to stand up, clutching his Metal Gear briefcase, complaining about his pathetic state with his pants shredded from the fall. But suddenly, the dark cavern's silence breaks, as two massive glowing yellow eyes open right in front of him in the dark. The boy turns pale in sheer terror, breaking into a cold sweat as he senses the crushing presence of a colossal beast awakening terrifyingly right before him. A giant saber-toothed tiger with golden stripes emerges from the shadows, growling extremely menacingly at the cornered, unlucky MC. The colossal monster lets out an insanely powerful wild roar that makes the cavern's entire stone structure tremble under the beast's relentless fury. Kang Seoyul drops into total panic and starts sprinting frantically for his life, realizing his plans to slip by unnoticed went horribly wrong. He recognizes the terrible Gyumho, the dungeon's rank S guardian, a giant golden tiger the size of a house that crushes any trespasser who challenges it. The colossal beast pounces toward him with sharp claws, and the hero frantically wonders what he can do to survive that lethal attack without his bow. Without his elven bow nearby, the boy draws his small metal dagger, knowing that close-range knife will barely tickle the monster's hide. The young man's eyes glow intensely with green wind energy as he tries to focus all his concentration to predict the next devastating attack. Imposing Gyumho lands a devastating claw swipe that cuts the air, launching a massive reddish shockwave directly at the boy's body. The young man uses all his speed to dodge the devastating attack, realizing in despair that the rank S monster's physical strength is simply absolute. The giant tiger slams its massive paw with full force, triggering an absurd explosion that sends our young hero flying backward from the impact pressure. Kang Seoyul groans in pain while sliding across the debris and dust-covered floor, realizing he won't survive long like this. Knowing his life is at severe risk, the boy decides he has no choice but to bet all his cards on his newest piece of gear. With resolve, he quickly pops open his metal briefcase and pulls out the powerful fierce tiger gauntlets to try and balance that crazy fight. On the other side of the cavern, the golden monster roars sadistically and menacingly, prepping to land the finishing blow on the cornered boy. The hero puts on the golden gloves, knowing that due to the system glitch, he can only keep that relic active for a maximum of 1 minute of combat. He assumes a firm fighting stance, wrapped in a brilliant aura of golden energy, deciding he needs to defeat that colossal beast before time runs out. Guardian Gyumho roars furiously, pouncing again toward the boy with sharp claws gleaming, ready to shred the trespasser for good. The boy lets out a defiant battle cry and charges head-on against the giant monster, channeling all the gauntlet's mystical energy into his fists. In the exact same second, a green mark shaped like a tiger magically materializes beneath the MC's torn clothes during the rush. He feels his blood boil with rage, and his body undergoes a scary transformation, growing sharp canine teeth and altering his gaze. The boy realizes he just activated the Wild Instinct special skill etched into the relic, boosting his physical stats to an absurd tier. Sensing an unreal strength running through his veins, the hero smiles confident, believing he can now face the giant on equal footing. The Guardian rushes forward, claws set for impact, but the MC doesn't back down, prepping a direct punch against the creature's head with all his power. But weirdly enough, the tiger stops the attack at the very last second and begins nuzzling its face against the boy affectionately like a docile house cat. The colossal beast begins purring loudly and wagging its tail joyfully, leaving poor Kang Seoyul completely in shock, clueless about what happened. The golden giant gives a massive lick that slathers the MC's entire face, while he screams frantic, unable to comprehend the reason for all that sudden affection. The tiger rolls onto its back, happily wagging its tail before the boy, who remains frozen with his golden gloves glowing in the cavern. The MC watches that unbelievable display of cuteness and begins suspecting that somehow the beast recognized him as its true master and leader. He stands very confused, remembering dungeon guardians are created solely to attack trespassers, trying to figure out what triggered that wild shift. He looks at his skin and discovers to his surprise that besides the elven seal, he now also has a mark with the beastkin race symbol carved on his body. The young archer concludes that upon equipping the golden gauntlets, he ended up temporarily inheriting all physical traits and respect of that wild race. But the joy is short-lived, and the system collapses with an error message on screen, forcing the boy to let out a cry of pain as his mana destabilizes. The gauntlets unequip on their own and fly away, confirming the 1-minute limit is up, leaving Tiger Gyumho pretty confused by the vanishing power. Seoyul wipes the sweat from his face, relieved, realizing that even without testing the special strength skill, the beastkin marks secured an unexpected edge. With a friendly smile, the young man approaches the colossal beast and asks if it could carry him and his briefcase to the deepest part of that dungeon. The golden giant flashes a lovely smile of happiness and lets out an extremely cute cat meow, joyfully confirming it will assist its new master.